the video, that is the first time detectives learned that there was actually 4 people in that gray Jeep, and that the defendant, Jamel Demons, is in the rear driver's side seat.
Fresh footage just dropped, and it's shaking the YNW Melly case to its core. For the first time, the world is seeing raw evidence of what allegedly went down that dark October night, the night that would turn brotherhood into betrayal and dreams into death. We're talking about the moment when loyalty snapped, when one of Melly IS' own circle might have flipped the script on his homie once the streets hit a dead end, and the consequences were deadly. October 26, 2018 was supposed to be another night of grinding. Studio sessions, street moves, young hustlers chasing fame while dodging demons that never stopped lurking. But before the sun came up, 2 childhood friends, YNW Juvy and YNW Sakchaser, were found lifeless, while their brother, the same one they trusted, YNW Melly, was staring down the barrel of double murder charges in county jail. The whole scene reads like the coldest betrayal hip-hop has ever witnessed. The YNW crew had always been more than a rap group. They were a family forged in the brutal streets of Gifford, Florida. Out there, it's a hood where you either claw your way out or get buried under the weight of poverty, crime, and blood politics.
The vibes look decent. I'm gonna be honest with you. It don't look like nobody kind of beefing. Nobody look too excited. You know, if somebody kind of got into it, like, might be like, they're not just walking normal. Like, everybody looks kind of chill.
Melly, born Jamel Demons, was rising fast with his hit Murder on My Mind, a track that turned him from a neighborhood name into a national sensation. But while the fans were celebrating, cracks were already splitting the crew wide open. Behind the scenes, his day ones felt left in the shadows. YNW Sakchaser and YNW Juvy, Anthony Williams, just 21, and Christopher Thomas Jr., only 19, had been rocking with Melly since kids, surviving the same struggles and pushing through the same pain. Yet, as Melly's fame skyrocketed, the money wasn't flowing the way they thought it should. Text messages later pulled by the feds painted a chilling picture. Sakchaser was demanding his cut, sending Melly messages like, "You blowing up, we still eating crumbs. Pay up or we done?" That's not just frustration, that's street language for war brewing within the family. And in Gifford, loyalty isn't optional, it's survival. Once trust is broken, consequences can come quick, no matter who you are. This was a crew that had suffered together, seen friends drop in the streets, and supported each other through blood, sweat, and bullets. To watch that bond crumble under money, pride, and ambition, it's the kind of betrayal that hip-hop rarely forgets. Melly's big break with 300 Entertainment in July 2018 was supposed to elevate the entire crew. Somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000 hit his pockets, but instead of unity, it created jealousy. And when his collaboration with Kanye West on Mixed Personalities took him global, the gap between Melly and his friends became a canyon. Foreign cars, iced-out chains, luxury living.
This is Sakchaser. Where does he get in? Good. Remember they said it was a gray vehicle. He gets into, this is Juvy, I said, right? He gets into the front right side.
Melly was living a dream, while his homies were still stuck in the trap, staring at empty plates and broken promises. To make things worse, the gang politics of Gifford weren't letting up either. YNW wasn't just a rap brand. It was tied to blood affiliations, to Gifford slimes, to street codes that demanded respect and resource sharing. Melly's rise had disrupted the balance.
Melly comes, and Melly goes to the back passenger. Yeah.
Making him a target not just of jealousy from his closest friends, but also within the larger set. The higher he climbed, the more resentment he attracted, until even his own brothers started questioning whether he was riding for them, or only for himself. And when loyalty and ego collide in the streets, somebody always pays with blood. That October night wasn't just about music, money, or fame. It was about survival in a world where trust is rare and betrayal can be fatal.
He even shot through the seat multiple times, and there was no defense wounds to be like, stop. You get me? It was that quick. Bang, 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 bang. That quick. When
the crew had been chilling at New Era recording studios, laying down tracks, just another night in the grind. Or at least that's what it looked like on camera. Surveillance footage shows the 4 of them moving calm, like brothers clocking out after a late session. But anyone from the streets knows, still waters run deep, and under that calm surface, death was already waiting. At 4:08 a.m., the cameras captured all four sliding out together, piling into a rented gray Jeep Compass. On the surface, it seemed normal, but when you break down who sat where, it becomes chilling. The seating arrangement told a story louder than words. Sakchaser unknowingly climbed into what the streets call the death seat, the front passenger spot that prosecutors later argued was practically a setup for his final ride. Meanwhile, Melly slid into the back left seat, right behind the driver, the exact spot the DA would describe as the perfect position to pull off an execution. The state says this wasn't coincidence. This was strategy. Between 4:10 and 4:20 a.m., while the car crept down the dark back roads near Miramar Parkway, prosecutors allege Melly started letting shots off from that back left position. The gunfire erupted fast, too fast for anyone to react. Sakchaser was hit 8 times with bullets ripping through his head, neck, and chest. Juvy was struck 4 times, each hit deadly enough to end his life before he could even turn his head. The kind of ambush that left no chance of survival.
To stage the shooting, because they believe people were already dead, they hopped out the car and then they shot up the car afterwards, and they believe those bullet casings they found at that spot was a .40 caliber.
The autopsy evidence backed up the DA's claims with shocking detail. Stippling unburnt gunpowder was found on the wounds, proving shots were fired at point-blank range. Even worse, there were no defensive wounds, not a single scratch showing they had tried to fight back. That meant they never saw it coming. They thought they were riding home with their brother, until the very last second when the shots tore through the silence of that Jeep. Sakchaser's fatal wound told a gruesome story, entering at the back of his skull and exploding upward with enough force to blow out the front passenger window. Juvy's headshot came through his left cheek, the trajectory showing he was sitting forward, unaware.
And Mr. Demmons responds very succinctly, "I did that."
When the bullet ripped through him, every detail painted a picture of a calculated hit, the kind of cold-blooded execution that even hardened homicide detectives admitted shook them to the core. What made it even darker was how much it looked planned out. The spot chosen wasn't random. It was a remote, surveillance-free area, perfect for a setup with no eyes watching. And the brutality didn't stop at killing. Forensics revealed multiple rounds were fired after Sakchaser and Juvy were already dead. Bullets tearing through seats and windows in a staged attempt to craft a fake drive-by narrative. The shooter didn't just take lives, they tried to rewrite the story on the spot, leaving investigators to piece together a crime that looked more like a movie script than reality. This wasn't sloppy street rage. This was execution-level planning. Every step, from the initial shots to the staged aftermath, screamed of someone who mapped it all out in advance. And the coldest part? What happened after Sakchaser and Juvy were already gone? Prosecutors claim the killers didn't just walk away, they doubled back to build an illusion. After the homies were gunned down, the Jeep was driven to a secluded spot. That's where the alleged shooters hopped out and opened fire on the vehicle from the outside with a completely different weapon. The goal? Make it look like a random drive-by, just another senseless hood ambush. At 4:35 a.m., YNW Bortland pulled up to Memorial Hospital Miramar with 2 bodies in the car, acting calm as if nothing was wrong. He told police and doctors the story. They got hit in a drive-by.
And they sit and they walk side by side for an hour, that mile-long stretch, looking for evidence of this drive-by. Because evidence is the remnants a crime leaves behind. And in this case, the lack of evidence is very important.
Cool, collected, stone-faced like it was just another night gone bad. Meanwhile, prosecutors say Melly slipped out from the scene, picked up later, leaving Bortland to play the role of survivor and spin the fake story. But the script started to unravel fast. The DA's smoking gun, social media receipts. As word spread about the murders, friends and fans started hitting up Melly to make sure he was okay. And when one close homie asked what really happened, Melly allegedly dropped just 2 ice-cold words. "I did that." Prosecutors call it nothing less than a digital confession, the kind of slip that would haunt him in court forever. But why would anyone take out their own crew? The DA and the streets both point to the same toxic cocktail: money, jealousy, and gang politics. Melly's come-up had already created serious problems within YNW. Success meant bread, but it also meant pressure, envy, and fractures in the gang's power structure. All four were tied into the YNW Bloods, the Gifford Slimes, a set where bread and loyalty don't mix well. And when respect clashes with paper in the hood, history shows somebody always ends up in a coffin. And here's the part that sent shockwaves even deeper. Melly wasn't beefing with random ops. These weren't outsiders, rivals, or neighborhood enemies. These were his brothers. The same brothers whose names he tattooed on his face while they were still alive, showing the world they were family forever.
In the video, that is the first time detectives learned that there was actually 4 people in that gray Jeep, and that the defendant, Jamel Demons, is in the rear driver's side seat.
Childhood homies who came up together, dreamed together, fought together to escape poverty through music. The betrayal wasn't just bloody, it was personal, gut-wrenching, and almost unthinkable. But detectives weren't buying the drive-by story. The scene looked too staged, too polished, like someone had studied how to fake a crime scene and nearly pulled it off. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered layers of planning that turned this from a routine hood shooting into one of the most sophisticated forensic puzzles the state had ever seen. Evidence started piling up, exposing a cover-up so detailed, so carefully executed, that it almost fooled the system itself. Almost. When Miramar PD stormed the hospital parking lot, the first thing they did was lock down that bullet-riddled Jeep. Detectives immediately pulled YNW Bortland aside, grilling him for details. His story rolled out smooth, like a script ripped straight from the streets. He claimed they were on their way home from the studio when some mystery shooters pulled up and sprayed the ride in a wild drive-by. But when investigators went to fact-check the tale, the cracks started showing fast. Cops shut down the entire stretch of Miramar Parkway from 160th to 172nd Street, combing the asphalt for over an hour. They weren't just glancing, they were crawling over every inch like bloodhounds. But here's the kicker: nothing. No shell casings, no broken glass, no bullet fragments, no skid marks. Nothing to prove a gun battle ever went down there. And when detectives widened the search another full mile, same result. It was eerie. Because that Jeep looked like Swiss cheese. 16 bullet holes, blown out windows, busted glass. Yet the scene was clean as a whistle. For seasoned homicide cops, this wasn't just odd. It was impossible. Drive-by shootings.
Because at that location is where the cell phones of Christopher Thomas, Anthony Williams, and Jamel Demons all line up at 4:02 a.m. That point, afterwards, Mr. Demons' phone tracks with the 2 victims until about 4:20.
Especially ones with that kind of heavy gunfire leave a trail. Always. Casings littered across the asphalt, glass scattered across lanes, bullet impacts tagging nearby poles, walls, or cars, tire marks from panic turns. But here, there was nothing. To them, it screamed setup. The deeper they looked, the more suspicious it got. The Jeep had 16 entry points, and several bullets had passed completely through the vehicle. Logic said those rounds should have struck pavement, barriers, or even surrounding brush. But no secondary impacts were located. Even stranger, the glass pattern didn't match a moving vehicle hit. Normally, when a car gets lit up mid-drive, glass shatters outward in a spread based on speed and angle. But here, zero evidence at the supposed scene. No shards, no glittering pieces of safety glass under the streetlights. It looked like the windows had been blown out somewhere else entirely. That's when investigators flipped the strategy. Instead of chasing a fake crime scene, they worked backwards, retracing every step to New Era recording studios. And that move cracked the case wide open. The studio had cameras everywhere, and the footage told a different story, one that tore Bortland's version to shreds. The timestamp showed the crew leaving the studio together at 4:08 a.m., piling into the Jeep calm and collected. But here's the twist. Bortland never once mentioned that Melly was with them. He spun it like only he and the victims were in the ride, yet the surveillance clearly showed Melly sliding into the whip too. That realization hit detectives hard. If Melly had really been there, how did he walk away untouched while his 2 brothers ended up riddled with bullets? Unless he wasn't a victim at all. The footage also exposed other inconsistencies.
Why is that important? That shows a gun was fired inside of that car.
Timelines didn't line up. Details Bortland gave didn't match what cameras captured. The deeper cops dug, the more it looked like they weren't investigating a drive-by. They were unraveling an inside job, staged from the moment the crew left the studio. The surveillance timestamps told their own story. At 3:19 a.m., not the earlier time Bortland had tried to push in his police interviews, the cameras caught all 4 men leaving the studio. And the vibe? Calm, casual, relaxed. No heated arguments, no shifty looks over their shoulders. No sign they felt threatened at all. If they really thought they were being stalked by shooters, they weren't showing it. The footage showed brothers walking out like any other late night after grinding in the booth. Inside the studio, the story was the same. Hours of footage showed them laughing, vibing, working on tracks, completely normal interactions. No blow-ups, no hostility. Their body language said unity, not conflict. This footage destroyed any claim that the murders were a spur-of-the-moment fight gone wrong. The vibe that night wasn't chaos. It was calm, until the bullets flew later on. But then came the detail that blew Bortland's credibility to pieces. In his first interviews, he forgot to mention something huge. Melly was in the car too. That's not some minor slip. That's a straight-up lie of omission, and detectives knew it. If he was lying about who was in the Jeep, then how much else was fabricated?
The whole operation really was.
When the drive-by was staged at 4:02 a.m., the victims were already dead.
The autopsy showed that the external gunshot wounds happened.
Cops started looking at him sideways, realizing they weren't just dealing with a grieving homie. They were staring at a man knee-deep in deception. That's when investigators took the case high-tech. Cell phone forensics, GPS pings, step counts, digital receipts that don't lie. What the detectives pulled from those phones was more devastating than any witness testimony. The data traced their every move like a digital map of betrayal. Cell tower records showed all 3 phones, Melly's, Sakchaser's, and Juvy's, together at a remote spot near US 27 and Pembroke Road at 4:02 a.m. That's the exact time frame prosecutors say the murders went down. The phones stayed at that desolate location for 18 minutes, not moving until 4:20 a.m. After that, the devices split. 2 moved toward the hospital, while another peeled off toward a gated community, tracking the exact routes prosecutors would later present in court. The precision was brutal. Investigators could see their movements minute by minute, reconstructing the whole night like a movie reel. They even caught how the vehicles separated at Miramar Parkway and 184th Street, with one headed deeper into the cut, while the other rolled toward the Sunset Lakes neighborhood. That split was the digital smoking gun showing this wasn't random. It was orchestrated, but the tech evidence went deeper than GPS. Turns out, Melly and Sakchaser had the exact same make and model of phone, even on the same plan. That allowed investigators to match their movements in parallel, proving they were side by side until Sakchaser was gone forever. Both phones traveled to the remote location together, and only one came back. Even step counts told a damning story.
YNW Borland, he could took the deal. Where did I leave Melly though, brother? Where did I leave YNW Melly and the case?
Melly's phone recorded 70 steps at the studio, then another 70 steps at 4:02 a.m., the exact murder window. But what shook prosecutors the most? Between 4:42 and 4:53 a.m.,
Counts 1 and 2 is murder in the first degree with a firearm. Those are capital offenses. The maximum and mandatory penalty is life in Florida State Prison. Counts 3 and 4 are accessory after the fact to murder in the first degree. Those are each first degree felonies. The maximum penalty is 30 years in Florida State Prison.
his phone logged 1,397 steps, movement that investigators say matched him walking away from the crime scene after staging the fake drive-by setup. The digital footprint was undeniable. It tied Melly not just to the Jeep, but to the aftermath itself. The digital trail alone was devastating. But when paired with the ballistics, the story of a staged massacre became undeniable. Investigators proved that Melly wasn't just present. He was moving around after the murders, logging nearly 1,400 steps, allegedly arranging his getaway while his brothers' bodies lay lifeless in the Jeep. But the true smoking gun came from the bullets themselves. Inside the Jeep, detectives recovered shell casings that showed the fatal shots came from within the vehicle, not from any passing car. That instantly destroyed the drive-by lie. Then, when investigators searched the remote location flagged by the phone data, they uncovered 8 more .40 caliber casings scattered in the dirt. What the ballistics team discovered blew the case wide open. 2 separate shooting events had gone down that night. The first, execution-style shots from inside the Jeep. The second, staged fire from outside, carefully orchestrated to sell the illusion of a random street ambush. The forensic breakdown revealed the killers had used multiple firearms, a different caliber for the staging shots than for the murders. This wasn't panic. It was planning, a setup designed to muddy the evidence and confuse ballistics experts. But trajectory analysis sealed the truth. The fatal rounds came directly from the rear left passenger seat, right where surveillance had shown Melly sitting.
Now, I know some of y'all are super thugged out in here. A life sentence, what? But when he was only facing 30 years, he was like, They added the murder charges afterwards to make that nigga know, oh, you think we only want Melly? We'll fry you too. I think that made him think a little bit different.
The angles lined up perfectly, bullets traveling across the Jeep into the front passenger seat where Sakchaser sat, and into the rear right where Juvy rode. These weren't stray shots. These were precise, point-blank executions from someone who had complete control and the element of surprise. And the staging?
In exchange for that, I'm going to adjudicate you guilty on the 2 accessory counts as well as the tampering count. I'm going to sentence you to 10 years in Florida State Prison. That will be followed by 6 years of reporting probation. I guess at some point after the fact, the state wants to take a proffer from you or have a discussion with you, ask you some questions about whatever that may be.
When pleading to an accessory to murder after the fact, you have to acknowledge that the murder happened and you assisted someone or in some way to cover the murder.
It was even colder. The external shots fired later were clustered mostly along the passenger side of the Jeep, mimicking the spread of a real drive-by. But the trajectories were all wrong. Instead of angles consistent with a moving car spraying the vehicle, the evidence showed rounds were fired by someone standing still, aiming deliberately into the parked Jeep. The medical examiner's findings hit like a hammer. Their autopsies revealed the worst detail of all. The external drive-by gunshots had been fired after death. These weren't just bullets into glass and metal. They were fired into corpses after the fact, to sell the illusion of a street hit. That proved the staging wasn't sloppy cover. It was calculated, deliberate, and ice cold. As if that wasn't enough, detectives found digital receipts tying Melly to the cover-up in real time. Phone records showed he FaceTimed his girl while still at the staging site, starting to spin his alibi story. He even sent out GPS location pins, calling for someone to pick him up from that remote spot, while Bortland drove the blood-soaked Jeep straight to the hospital. The web of lies was unraveling, and it looked airtight. But then, court flipped everything. When the case finally went to trial in 2023, it ended in chaos. A hung jury. 8 jurors voted guilty, 4 refused to convict. The missing murder weapon, unanswered questions about motive, and accusations of sloppy police work created just enough doubt to stall the state's case. For years after, both Melly and Bortland managed to hang on to freedom, despite the mountain of evidence that had nearly buried them. For years, both Melly and Bortland kept their lips sealed, holding the same line, that they were victims of a drive-by, not orchestrators of an inside job. But loyalty in the hood always has an expiration date when life sentences start hanging over your head. What happened next proved that when the system applies enough pressure, brotherhood can crumble in an instant. The bond they swore was unbreakable snapped the moment survival became the only priority. September 9th, 2025 marked that date, because that's the day loyalty died in the YNW case. Just hours before jury selection for his own trial, YNW Bortland made the move that sent shockwaves through the streets. After 6 years of silence, 6 years of holding firm, he flipped.
Like, y'all know Melly didn't kill his 2 best friends. Like, come on. Like, we go through this every time with us, culture, being black, artists. Y'all know we targeted.
He cut a deal with prosecutors, a plea bargain that could send his childhood brother, YNW Melly, straight to death row. The ultimate betrayal was now official, and from that moment on, Bortland's name carried a new label: Rat for life. The timing was brutal. His defense team had been gearing up for war. Potential jurors were already lined up.
Melly looks defeated, man. It's been 7 years, bro. It's been 7 years. He looks defeated, bro. He looks defeated.
And the opening salvos were about to begin. But then, everything changed in one night. The state had slowly boxed him in, and with the walls closing tight, Bortland chose survival over street code. The prosecutors had been playing chess the entire time. Piece by piece, they stacked charges on him like bricks until the weight became unbearable. What began as a manageable accessory charge, the type that meant some years behind bars but still a chance at freedom, evolved into something monstrous. Suddenly, Bortland wasn't just accused of helping cover up Melly's alleged crimes. He was now staring down 2 counts of first-degree murder himself, plus witness tampering and gang activity charges that made him look like a central player in a criminal conspiracy. By the time September rolled around, the scoreboard was terrifying. 5 potential life sentences plus 75 years stacked on top. The prosecution had transformed Bortland from a side character into a co-star in one of the most high-profile murder cases hip-hop has ever seen. And the cruelest part? In Florida, first-degree murder doesn't leave wiggle room. It's mandatory life with no parole, no deals, no maybe. Once you're convicted, your life is over. Period. For a young man who had already wasted 6 years behind bars waiting for trial, that reality was soul-crushing. He'd tasted enough of confinement to know he couldn't let the rest of his life disappear behind steel doors. That was the breaking point. Loyalty, friendship, brotherhood. It all collapsed under the weight of raw self-preservation. The witness tampering and gang activity charges only turned up the heat. Those accusations suggested that prosecutors believed Bortland hadn't just been quiet. He had been actively obstructing justice and doing it in coordination with a criminal enterprise. That narrative painted him not as a loyal bystander, but as a strategic player who needed to be broken down to expose the bigger target, Melly himself. In the end, the system got what it wanted. The prosecutor's relentless pressure turned a 6-year wall of silence into the ultimate betrayal. And the hood learned once again that when the stakes are life or death, the code of the streets is no match for the fear of a life sentence. Every charge stacked on YNW Bortland was a ticking time bomb. Each one carried the potential for life behind bars, giving prosecutors multiple shots at ending his future permanently. The DA's strategy wasn't sloppy, it was straight-up warfare. They slowly tightened the screws, escalating charges until Bortland went from facing a couple decades to staring down multiple life sentences. The message was clear: flip or die in prison. And finally, he broke. Under the plea deal, Bortland dodged the most lethal bullets. The 2 murder charges, the ones that would have locked him in a cage forever, were dropped. Instead, he pled guilty to 2 counts of accessory after the fact to murder, 1 count of witness tampering in a capital case, and 1 count of unlawful use of a communication device. On paper, that's years instead of decades, survival instead of death. But the real price wasn't time. It was truth. The deal came with a proffer requirement, a sworn statement where Bortland has to spill everything he knows, no filters, no lies. The judge laid it out in black and white. If you want this deal, you have to snitch, period. And that's the part that cuts Melly the deepest. By pleading guilty to being an accessory, Bortland legally admitted that murders occurred, and that he actively helped cover them up. That single admission demolished the defense's favorite talking point, that this was just a tragic drive-by. Now that argument is dead in the water. Even worse for Melly, Bortland's plea confirms he was in the vehicle when the murders happened. That ties him directly to the crime scene in a way no prosecutor had been able to do for 6 long years. For the state, it's checkmate. For Melly, it's betrayal at the highest level. But for Bortland, the math made sense. With time served, good behavior, and a structured sentence, he could be back on the streets in as little as 3 to 5 years. Compare that to the certainty of rotting away under a life sentence, or worse, a pine box if the death penalty stuck. When survival is on the line, even the strongest street codes crack. And here's the dagger. The proffer isn't just a formality. It's a full Queen for a Day session where Bortland must answer every single question about October 26, 2018, under oath. If he lies, stalls, or holds back, the deal is void. and the murder charges come crashing back down on him. That forces total honesty, no matter how much dirt it kicks on Melly's name. Prosecutors love this setup because it gives them ironclad leverage. Bortland's testimony won't just be another witness story. It'll be sworn truth under penalty of losing his freedom again. That makes his word powerful, dangerous, and devastating for Melly's defense. For 6 years, the strategy was to deny, deny, deny. Now with one plea deal, that entire defense has been dismantled brick by brick. The system got what it wanted. Bortland saved himself. And Melly? He's now standing at the edge of death row, with his own brother-in-arms set to testify against him. After years of standing shoulder to shoulder, the weight of those stacked charges finally broke YNW Bortland's silence. What the streets call never fold turned into survival mode once the reality of dying behind bars set in. The betrayal hit like a bomb, because for Melly, locked down since February 2019, Bortland's flip is the ultimate dagger to his defense. With a retrial already scheduled for January 2027, prosecutors now have what they were missing all along: an insider willing to speak from the inside out, and that could seal Melly's fate for good. The case has ripped the mask off the so-called street code, exposing how quickly loyalty can vanish once the system applies maximum pressure. For 6 years, both men kept their stories aligned, pushing the drive-by narrative. But survival isn't about loyalty. It's about leverage. And now Bortland is the state's weapon. Melly's legal team, though, has been pushing back hard, calling the entire case a witch hunt. A setup designed to railroad a young black artist the system always wanted to cage. They argue that prosecutors broke Bortland down with threats of endless years, twisting his back against the wall until flipping felt like his only way out. Supporters of Melly have been loud on socials. Like, y'all know Melly didn't kill his 2 best friends. Like, come on, like we go through this every time. Us culture, being black artists, y'all know we targeted. To his fans, this is bigger than one case. It's another example of hip-hop's brightest stars being hunted by the system. Another chapter in the story of artists turned into targets. But in the courtroom, math don't lie. With years already served, Bortland chose the path that gave him a shot at freedom, while leaving Melly staring down the possibility of death row. And the toll of this 6-year ordeal is showing. When Melly appeared for a bond hearing, the weight of time was carved into his face. The high-security lockups, the years of solitary confinement, the endless stress of wondering if you'll live to see freedom again. It's punishment before punishment. Legal experts point out that in cases like this, the conditions themselves amount to a slow burn sentence, breaking defendants mentally and physically long before a jury even decides their fate. 6 years locked down. Dreams of fame traded for fluorescent lights and concrete walls. A brother turned state witness. A retrial looming with the death penalty on the line. The saga of YNW Melly has become one of the coldest, darkest stories hip-hop has ever witnessed. One that will test the meaning of loyalty, justice, and survival to the very end.